Not since Hitchcock's Psycho has a motion picture held such thrill, such suspense, such hair-raising terror. And why? Because the horrors of Savage Weekend could happen to anyone in this audience.
Welcome to That's Canon, where we talk about the Canon Film Library and other similar films. This is episode 6, and we're your hosts, Phil
and Greg.
So, Greg, I think last week we said that we were on an every other rotation of good, bad, and that this week should have been good.
Yeah, we thought we were on like an odds-even Star Trek kind of run, but I think 6 episodes in, we've broken that already. So,
yes, we definitely went to 2 bad movies in a row. It's like we've transitioned from the original Star Trek films into the next generation Star Trek films, where it's just a series of shit. Hey, I know you're a Next Generation fan.
Hey, First Contact was a national treasure, and I'll fight you.
Does it go? It goes Generations and then First Contact?
Yeah, Generations, First Contact, Insurrection, Nemesis.
Okay, so maybe we're in the Insurrection Nemesis phase.
Oh,
then,
for sure.
Where both of those were pretty bad. I actually did like I did like the First Contact. Generations was all right. We're getting off track here. This isn't a Star Trek
Star
podcast.
Trek is never off track.
So we watched Savage Weekend, which is written and directed by a double threat named David Paulson, who's really done Dallas, the TV show, and Dynasty, another TV show. Those are kind of like soap opera type movies. Now, the film is billed as an predecessor predating both Halloween and Friday the 13th. But what's odd is if you look at the release date, it's November 14th, 1980, and Halloween came out in 1978. So this movie was actually made in 1976.
Right, yeah. I remember seeing that too. I didn't do it nearly as much research as probably you normally do, but yeah, I saw the same thing where it was kind of billed as a proto-slasher, and I mean, we'll get into it. It sort of has some of those elements, but I don't know. I feel like that might be a bit hyperbolic, just to say the least.
It's definitely, yeah. Let's just go ahead and get into it, and maybe everyone else, hopefully you'll go out and watch Savage Weekend for yourself and take a look as well. The movie opens up with the worst banjo music I've ever heard, and it doesn't really fit the scene in which they're trying to convey.
No.
Because it's a woman running through the forest, and there's quick flashes of another guy kind of walking through the forest. So there's something creepy going on, and VCR quality credits appear.
Yeah, that all the writing is unreadable.
I can't read a single thing. Now, do you think it's because we have bigger TVs and this is VCR quality? If we had like a 25-inch crappy tube TV and we were watching this on a VCR, do you think we'd actually be able to read these credits?
Maybe. I mean, okay, so I don't think so. And here's why. Because I watched this on my computer monitor, which admittedly is a higher resolution but less than my TV, but I still couldn't read it, even with it scrunched down a little bit, and my face is right in front of the screen. I had to, like you did, like you did, I had to look up a lot of the credits because I couldn't read them.
The credits were in this yellow, horrible font.
Yeah.
And I find that earlier movies, if you don't have that black outline around the credits, you're not going to read whatever it's trying to say, especially if the print isn't perfect,
or some kind of shadow or something. Yeah, something to get to not blend too much into what's actually being shown on the screen.
Exactly. We're talking a lot about the credits. So we see a weird looking guy. He's not wearing a mask. The guy just looks weird.
Yeah, kind of a general sort of, I don't know, horror movie Appalachian yokel is sort of the look that they're going for with him, I guess.
Perfect way to describe the way this weird guy looks. Appalachian yokel. And then he picks up a chainsaw and he just starts to saunter over.
Yep, not in any kind of rush.
Towards the woman. And then we cut to New York City, the Big Apple, the city that never sleeps. And piano music plays that does not fit the scene that they're trying to convey.
Nope.
It's kind of upbeat and it's kind of fast paced, but then we transition into an apartment where we see a whole bunch of people, and it's very confusing because not a lot of people are saying their names, and they're kind of talking to each other as if we're already a part of their lives, as if we've been introduced to these characters already.
Yeah, it's definitely. I had that. I think sort of set the theme for the rest of the viewing because I found it really, really hard to keep track of the characters in this movie.
And I wasn't drinking beer, and I started this movie at like 7:00 in the afternoon. So it's not like I was super tired or anything.
Right.
But these characters are talking not fast, but they're talking a lot. So we meet a few characters. Marie, who is the mom, or the wife character.
Right.
Marie is played by Marilyn Hamlin, who was in only 2 other things, and one of them was Shaft's Big Score. Now, Marie is talking to her son and a couple other people, and they're like, hey, Dad is coming home from the hospital, and he should be here any minute. And there's just more inane, unmemorable conversation that's going on until the dad character shows up, and the dad's name is Greg.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
And Greg
I wasn't thrilled about that.
I know. I started cracking up. Greg is played by Jeffrey Pomerantz, who was also in a couple episodes of Magnum PI and One Life to Live, so a bunch of stuff that we've never seen. Greg is somewhat of a well put together man. He's wearing a suit. He's got a nice mustache. He well coiffed, and he sounds very aggressive when he's talking to everyone.
Yeah,
even his son.
Yeah, he was a little on edge. And actually, I wrote a note before. As soon as he walked in and they announced his name is Greg, I wrote a note that says, "Oh no, main character named Greg. I really hope he's not a dick." And boy, did that go out the window real quick.
Because we soon find out that Greg was a part of a scandal with the mayor, and the mayor ended up killing himself, and Greg went to a mental hospital because of it, probably because of exhaustion. There was a lot of talk really quick, and I was wondering, is the mayor suicide plot going to be a part of this?
Oh, God.
And none of it is. This is all exposition to describe why Greg, a character that you've never met, wasn't in the first 2 minutes of the film.
Yeah, the way you mentioned it earlier, where you feel like we're coming in almost 20 minutes later in the movie than the movie wanted us to be, because they're talking about so much backstory, and I have no idea how these characters relate to each other, that I'm actually amazed I assume you wrote it down, but I'm amazed you even remembered anything about that whole mayor subplot. Like, it comes up a couple times, and I never was able to follow what Greg's whole backstory was about.
Exactly. It was kind of odd. So the mayor has committed suicide that we never get to see. We don't really know who the mayor is. I think they say his name, but it doesn't really matter.
Nah, it doesn't.
Greg talks about how there's a job down in Washington working with the FDA. And then Marie is like, oh, that's great. Maybe you can get it. And Greg's like, I didn't get the job.
That was Tuesday. Wednesday, they gave it to someone else.
It was, again, just such a weird thing to say. Why even bring it up, Greg? Why even bring it up?
I don't know. These characters are so insensitive right off the bat. And I think as soon as he says that, or maybe it was before, Marie, the character, the mom / wife character, she says, "How are you, Greg? Not so depressed." And I'm like,
yes, I've wrote that down too. Not depressed, Marie says to Greg. What a weird thing to say. You don't ask depressed people, are you depressed?
Like, sure, oh, yeah, yep. Wow, I'm fixed. I never thought of it that way.
Exactly. Oh, man. So then we get to see Greg's son, and the son is kind of talking to the dad, and this character, Robert, tries to give the son a baseball glove. And Greg goes, "Get your hands off my son."
Very aggressive, very weird.
Very aggressive. Robert is played by James Dewar, who played 4 different characters in the TV series Law and Order.
Really?
That's the most notable thing that he's done. Yes.
Just like
4 different characters in that one series.
Just different murder victims?
Yes. Insane. So there's the aggression from Greg towards Robert. Robert doesn't give the kid the baseball glove. I mean, who really gives a shit? This is within the first 8 minutes of the film.
Very forgettable scene in general.
And then it transitions as if someone just initiated a transition button. There's no exposition of what is going on.
No.
We just see them driving to a pit stop.
Well, that seems over. Okay, we're in the boonies, upstate New York now.
Which seems to be like the motif for the film is just like, we're done with this scene. Let's go ahead and go to the next one.
Yep.
With no real driving force for it.
Yeah, no kind of smooth transition. Because, I mean, I think maybe they mentioned briefly that they're going up to a cabin. I mean, it becomes obvious. But, again, the fact that you don't know how these characters know each other and they don't talk about what they're going to be doing, it's extremely confusing.
Exactly. They spend so much time describing the suicide and the depression, but they don't describe the driving force to get them to go upstate New York. As they drive up to upstate New York, they make a pit stop, and we get to meet a couple other new characters. One of them is named Nicky. Nicky is a guy, and he's played by Christopher Allport, who was in the Jack Frost films.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Jack Frost films that are the horror movies, not the Michael Keaton one about it's for children. He was also in one of my favorite X-Files episodes.
Yes, I'm glad you picked
Lazarus,
on that. Yep.
Who, in that episode, it was about someone who possessed an FBI agent that was also Scully's ex-boyfriend. Like a dangerous criminal possesses an FBI agent, and that FBI agent is Scully's ex-boyfriend. That's how it is.
Yep.
Christopher Allport died in an avalanche, Greg, in 2008.
Really?
Yeah, really, right? Sounds kind of weird. You don't really hear about too many avalanche deaths.
What a way to go, I guess.
Yeah, I guess Jack Frost really won in the end. So
Jack
they
Frost
drive.
got the last laugh on that one. Oh,
I'm sorry, Christopher Allport. I had to do it. So they drive to a pit stop, and we immediately see that Nicky is a gay man.
Oh yeah,
and we know this
almost a caricature.
Because the writer is writing a gay man as if a straight man is writing a gay man in the 80s or the 70s. Just very vulgar, very disgusting, right? Because there's a couple things that Nicky says when he goes into the pit stop that was kind of like caught me off guard. And Nicky says that he can't even escape his lovers from the men's room.
Yeah, it was a really weird. I mean, I was expecting already there's a gay character. He's kind of flamboyant. Movie, where are you going to take him? Because I already don't like where you're writing him. And that line was just the pits. So,
yes.
Okay. Are we really doing this movie? Come on.
It's really bad. He goes up to the bartender. Now, obviously, this is in Nowheresville, New York. He orders a Tanqueray martini, straight up with a twist. And the bartender is like, what?
I don't know what that is.
So he goes, give me some gin and a pretty glass. And then he starts to describe how to make the rest of the martini. He raises the glass and goes, to us. And there's two characters out, just in the bar going, what the hell is that?
Oh yeah. That's this whole scene, the way it's set up, which again, weird music choice because I'm pretty sure there's kind of this awkward porno bass music going on in the background of this one, which again, Third Time's a Charm doesn't fit. But you kind of almost know where you think where this scene is going because we've got what is a rural bar and a bunch of country folk in it, and in walks a flamboyant gay character, and you think, great, we know it's coming. He's gonna get harassed by some yokels at the bar, and fights ensue.
Yes, fights do ensue because two guys come up to Nicky, and Nicky attacks them pretty violently. These two guys are kind of insinuating that Nicky is going to do some kind of sexual favors towards them. And Nicky goes, the little thing that your mom sucks on before putting you to bed. And then he grabs he he smashes a beer bottle and he says, "I'm going to make a Bloody Mary out of your face."
Oh yeah, I mean it really went to 11 really fast. And honestly, this is the part that I was surprising where I thought that the two kind of yokels were gonna be the ones to start the fight, which is usually how these go. But Nikki immediately goes on the offensive. I think he breaks a chair over one guy, and then
He
he
does.
smashes the beer bottle and holds it to the other guy's neck. And it's like, whoa, Nikki coming out swinging.
Exactly, because the other two guys, it's very important to say, they never made any physical gestures towards Nikki that they were going to attack him. While they were being horribly rude by making sexually
Oh
suggestive
yeah, they're just giving him
comments,
shit.
there was no indication of violence. Nikki just sprang to action, which I guess maybe Nikki in the past has had some kind of horrible run-ins with people doing this to him. So he just took the initiative to do it. I think we're giving this character way too much of a backstory, probably more than the writer actually did.
Yeah, I mean, as weird as the scene was, it actually kind of set up as Nikki being by far the most interesting character to watch in this movie.
Yes. Because while Nikki is attacking two homophobic men in a bar, Robert, Marie, and another character named Shirley, who is Marie's sister, are at a grocery store. Shirley is played by Caitlin O'Heaney, and she was in a movie called Wolfen, which I actually will recommend for people to watch. It's a movie about an ancient Indian wolf spirit. Now, they're in the grocery store. They're picking up supplies for the weekend, and Shirley finds a mask that, it's a creepy mask, right? It has like a cut down the face. It looks like bones exposed. It looks like the mask a killer in a horror movie would wear.
Foreshadowing.
So everyone agrees, yes, Shirley, this is a creepy mask. All four of them then regroup, and they're going to go towards their cabin. And they find a bat nailed to the door of the cabin, which is really weird. And the whole reason the bat is nailed to the cabin is to kind of set up some dominoes that will fall down later in the film.
Does it?
Because, oh yeah, it does.
I guess I forget. Because, yeah, for some reason I had thought that the bat didn't show up again. I must have missed it later on.
Nikki goes, "Get me a hammer and some gloves. I'll take the bat off." And Robert goes, "Okay, I have to go down in the basement to do it." Now, Robert opens up the basement door and he goes down it by flicking on one light switch.
Oh, okay, yep.
There's no light, yet Robert still goes down there. He realizes there's no light, but he still goes down there. So he's standing in the pitch black and he's like, "Hey, someone turn on the other light switch." One of the characters, who gives a shit who, goes over there and turns on the light switch, and the basement's illuminated, and then he grabs the supplies. As he's coming back upstairs, Robert pointedly goes, "I always forget about that second light switch." And they turn both of them off.
I completely forgot. I know where you're going with this. We'll get to it, but I completely forgot that was set up. So I mean, more points for this movie in that case, because that sets up a kind of a cool scene later.
It does. I think that was like one of the first things that probably the writer sat down and went, "I want this to happen at the end of the movie. Let's set it up at the beginning of the movie." And then he just started scribbling in between to get to those points.
Right. Well done.
So Nikki takes off the bat and he makes a comment about how he needs to wear perfume on his hands for the rest of his life because the gloves that he wore touched a dead bat.
Which, okay, so we're in the middle of, COVID times. So I think we're all sensitive to germs, maybe a little bit more so than we normally are. And we keep being told to stop touching our face. After he takes this dead bat off the wall, he's like touching the gloves with his bare hands, and then he keeps touching his face, and it said like shivers up my spine. He kept touching his face and his eyes, and he's rubbing the side of his cheek, and with this nasty dead bat germs.
Yeah. Germs, I guess COVID germs didn't exist in the mid 1970s because for a man who now needs to wear perfume on his rest of his hands, he doesn't care that he's rubbing dead bat germs all over himself.
Dead bat goo, which, as we know, is the worst of the germs because all the kind of scary viruses in this world come from dead bats eating other things.
it's disgusting. And to think that someone took the bat and drove a nail through it onto their door. Now they're all writing this off as just a prank, but this is kind of concerning actions by whoever did this.
Which they totally brush off.
Yeah, killing an animal, and especially killing an animal senselessly, is an indicator of becoming a murderer of some kind.
Yeah.
So he takes the bat down, he says a couple jokes. Everyone is just rolling on the floor at Nikki and the jokes that he's doing and talking about wearing perfume. And then it cuts, another hard cut to the creepy guy from the beginning of the film going to a cemetery.
This was actually kind of the first shot in the movie that actually has it looks good. Because I mean, the sun is really low in the sky, and it's kind of shot with him, with the camera facing the sun, and he's kind of coming between the trees and casting some interesting shadows. And then you see a shot of the sun kind of peeking over at like an old headstone, and there's a wrought iron fence. And I mean, most of this movie, I'll say, doesn't look really well. It doesn't look good. It looks like it was shot with kind of not great film, but this is actually one of the scenes in the movie that actually has some kind of cool cinematography to it, which I definitely wanted to note because it's so rare in the rest of this movie.
Any scene that involves Otis at the cemetery, I feel, was made by someone different.
Yeah.
Because every scene actually does look good. The character that we meet, his name is Otis. Otis is played by William Sanderson, who's been in quite a lot of stuff. A few of my favorite movies is Skeeter, Man's Best Friend, and Blade Runner. He was J.F. Sebastian in Blade Runner.
Okay.
And he's also done an X-Files
Yeah,
episode.
This guy, I actually recognized him. He looks a lot different because I think he's aged quite a bit between now and when he did the X-Files episode, but that's another really good episode. I think that's the one where he is experiencing these subliminal messages and is being told to commit mass murder, and so is everyone else in this town, but he's sort of, the background plot where you sort of see him seeing these messages to kill people in his microwave and on the radio, and Scully and Mulder take him down at the end. Really great episode.
Really awesome episode. So Otis is talking to a tombstone of a guy named Clarence. Now, there's no backstory to Clarence. We don't know who Clarence is. It's just obviously someone that Otis knew in his past. And he's talking about how he's been hired to spruce up a boat, and how these people who are making him spruce up the boat want to use cement, and how cement is going to make the boat sink. And it's just like this weird exposition to set up a future scene.
Yeah, talk about another weird plot detail that just goes nowhere. This whole idea that they're out there and someone is building a boat out of concrete for some reason. And I mean, I know that they talk about it quite a few times, but I just found it so forgettable. I practically forgot all about it because the scenes in which they're talking about it are just so boring.
Exactly. But concrete ships are a real thing.
Yeah.
So when the character was going like, you don't make boats of concrete, I was like, you know what? That guy's right. Concrete would sink. And then I looked it up, and since the 1930s, they have been using concrete to help build ships with wood and steel. So, there you go. I learned something from Savage Weekend. And I don't know why I couldn't think that they wouldn't be able to do it, because look at battleships. They use steel, right? As long as it's wide enough and buoyant enough, it'll float.
This has been the Boat Podcast.
Exactly. So Otis gets done talking to Clarence, the tombstone, and I've noted down weird flute music starts to play.
Yeah, that comes up a couple times, doesn't it? Kind of a weird folky flute music. I mean, it definitely feels very 70s. It reminded me a lot of The Wicker Man, where there's a lot of that, like a similar kind of folky flute music going on the whole time. It does not seem to fit.
It doesn't seem to fit. And the person who made the music for this movie was just using music that he liked. It wasn't music that fit the scene that they were trying to convey. But we transition to three people on a boat. It's Marie, another guy named Mac McCauley, and Jay. Now, Mac McCauley is played by David Gale.
David Gale.
Probably, I would say, the most recognizable person in the film. David Gale played Dr. Carl Hill in Reanimator.
Such a good movie.
Now he didn't have a long career. He actually died from open heart surgery in the early 90s. That's why we've never seen him in anything else. Yeah.
I was actually just
really
thinking
sad.
that, because I was thinking during this whole thing, like, wow, he was really good. I mean, he's kind of creepy in this too, but he's really good in Reanimator. I was wondering, wow, I didn't think to look him up, but yeah, that's sad.
Yep. So Mac has probably the best facial hair in the entire film. He has this big handlebar mustache. He's a very rugged man because a lot of his scenes are with his shirt off or with his shirt open.
Yep, working as a lumberjack or a lumber guy, moving logs around. Very manly.
Exactly. The other guy in the boat, Jay, is played by Devin Goldenberg, who wrote a canon film called The Happy Hooker Goes to Hollywood.
I remember you mentioning that in the first episode that we did.
Yep.
Wow.
That's actually on Amazon Prime as well. The Happy Hooker Goes to Hollywood. So all these characters are kind of talking to each other in this nonsensical conversation. It really doesn't go anywhere for a little bit. We see Mac. He's trying to bait a worm on a hook, and he is just like wrapping this thing around this hook.
It looks like he's got 5 or 6 worms on there too. It's just a big wad of worms on this hook.
Exactly. Now, I fish. I'm not a professional fisher, but you don't put that many worms on a hook, and you don't tightly put a worm on a hook because you kind of want it to wriggle around in the water to catch fish. But while he's putting the worm on the hook, Mac tells a story about Otis.
Yes.
Otis, the guy that we just met earlier, and how Otis was in love with this woman and he wanted to be with her. And then he kind of goes crazy and he starts beating the girl, and he puts her in this device. Now, the device is used to hold cows or horses in place while they get branded, so the person who's doing the branding doesn't get hit. Otis brands this woman on the chest.
Oh, yeah.
The brand is in the shape of a T, so he has to do it twice because he makes an H with it. And Mac is kind of sitting there waiting for someone to go like, why an H? And then finally someone goes, why an H? It's for whore. Otis is stupid and he doesn't know how to write whore. It was like this really big setup to say that Otis is stupid and he's kind of crazy.
Yeah, this is a really weird flashback. I mean, I think that it sort of gives you a little bit more information about Otis, but all I remember about it is the really uncomfortable branding scene that you just described.
Exactly.
It looked, I mean, I don't know. I was actually trying to figure out how they did it because it looked like they branded skin. I mean, I don't know if it was like a piece of meat from the butcher or what, but it was really uncomfortable looking.
You know what? I wouldn't put that past it. If maybe they got like pig skin,
and
they branded it or something.
Yeah,
but it definitely looked really real.
Yeah,
right.
Between the look of the skin being branded and you can see it being singed and you can see it smoking. They really branded something, and they overlaid the woman's screams over it. It was actually surprisingly shocking because so up to this point the movie has been kind of tame, I'd say.
Exactly, and it's about to get a little bit crazier and crazier as we keep going on. So Marie is like, oh my God, the Otis that's working on Robert's boat. And then it cuts to a woman stripping in a field and laying down. And Nikki, the homosexual man from earlier in the film, is just watching her.
Kind of creeping from behind, or is he up in the house watching her from the window at this point, or is he in the tree?
Yeah.
Can't remember.
We see him transition from the house to the tree, which when they start doing this, because they do this a couple times with the character of Nikki, it makes you think that there's something nefarious going on because he seems to be somewhat captivated by Shirley. Yeah,
I had a hard time figuring that out. I couldn't tell if he was there. I mean, they clearly have set him up to be a gay character, but he was almost, there was like a jealousy almost in the way he's kind of creeping on Shirley. But then I sort of think, okay, maybe is he just being protective of her? It was hard to figure out what his motivation was for sort of watching her from afar.
So it cuts from her being nude back to the boat, and Mac has noticed that he dropped a fish hook. And I don't get this part. I don't get this part at all. Mac covers up the fish hook and then allows Jay to step on the fish hook and get the hook inside of his foot.
Yeah, he sort of he hides it with his body, and when Jay steps on it, he yanks up on the line to wedge it into his foot. It was bizarre. I mean, these people are out fishing together. Why does he want this guy to have a fish hook in his foot so badly?
Exactly. So Mac is like, "Do you want me to get it out for you?" Jay's like, "No, I'll do it." And he starts digging into his foot with a knife. Now, fish hooks, I know they have the barb at the end, but generally you can I've hooked my finger before. You just yank it out. It's pretty easy unless you get it hooked on like bone or something like that inside of you. But there's quite a bit of struggle from Jay to get this thing out.
Yeah.
Eventually he does. Eventually, Jay gets it out of his foot.
Pulls it out like he's pulling a tooth out almost. It's pretty painful looking.
He kind of stands up and he's like, "All right, I'm going back home." And then he just jumps right into the water.
Like it was nothing.
It's insane. I don't get. I saw it coming and I didn't want to believe that it was going to happen. But so Jay jumps in the water and swims off, and he leaves Marie and Mac with each other. And Marie starts talking about the suicide with the governor.
Mm-hmm.
They even say his name this time because I wrote it down because I wanted to see if this was going to come up again. Governor Beach killed himself. That's who Greg worked for. And that's why he was having, issues
I
mentally.
guess, yeah.
So you think that the conversation is going to go farther. It doesn't. It stops. And Jay walks up to Shirley, who's now nude, laying in a field, and he just starts having sex with her. There's no conversation. These two characters have never met before in any single solitary way. He walks up, takes his pants off, and Shirley's like, "Okay,
this is happening."
And they start having sex.
Yeah, this
so weird.
This starts the whole. I mean, I feel like it's a whole middle third of this movie, which seems to drag in general, but it becomes really sleazy really fast with this scene.
Very. And it's something that, yes, does continue on throughout the movie because Nikki is now watching them have sex. And Nikki is next to this barbed wire fence, and he intentionally puts his hands on the barb and stigmatas himself. Right? Like
right in the palm.
Right in the palm. He just it's like he's getting off from watching two people have sex and the pain that he's feeling. There's no reason for this in the movie at all because this doesn't go anywhere as Nikki as a character.
Nope, they don't establish. They really don't establish the relationships between any of the characters at all. So you have no idea what Nikki is supposed to be thinking and feeling, why he's sort of so anxious looking and why he's clearly self-harming on this fence. None of it makes any sense. We don't have any idea how anyone knows each other, why Nikki should be feeling this way, why Shirley was just good for this random stranger to be, want to have sex with her in a field. It makes no sense.
And the sex scene is pretty quick. We see more of Nikki harming himself than the actual sex scene.
Yeah.
And Jay gets up after the sex and he just walks away.
Again, without saying a word, not a word of dialogue has been exchanged between these two characters.
It's so odd. So odd. And then you think that maybe we're going to see something with Shirley. Maybe there's going to be some confrontation with Nikki. No, it cuts to Otis, who's in this big ass barn with a deconstructed boat. And he grabs a gun and he shoots something. And then he starts beating the shit out of it with the hilt of the gun. And it turns out to be a rat.
Yeah.
And as he's done killing the rat, Marie, Robert, Jay, and Shirley all show up together. No one's the wiser of the sex that just happened, and Otis kind of scares the women with the dead rat, and
like a child. It's
yeah. Robert goes up to Otis and he goes, "You haven't been making progress on this boat. I need this fixed today," or essentially he wants it done as quickly as possible. So Jay is going to help. I guess Jay knows how to build boats now. There's no real explanation of who this Jay guy is or what he does. But we definitely know that Robert is a businessman of some kind.
Yeah, the way they set him up, I mean, it's he seems like he owns the boat or is in charge of the boat project, and he brought Jay up to get Otis back on track. I think this is all us trying to piece it together based on, offhanded dialogue.
Exactly. So odd. A lot of conversation going on. Otis gets pissed and he's like, you can't tell that yuppie what to do. He doesn't know how to build boats, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, Shirley and Jay are in the boat being constructed and they're dancing around and acting like a couple of idiots. And eventually Otis leaves and Marie goes up to comfort Robert. Marie and Robert are dating, and Marie's like, so what did Otis do? And Robert goes, he just spit his filthy tobacco juice and glared at me.
Such open contempt for this boat builder, I guess. We don't really establish what Otis's deal is, but I mean, the way that they wrote Otis, it was a little confusing because we've established that we're in upstate New York, right? Why does Otis sound and behave like we're in the deep South?
I don't know.
It makes no sense.
It's so weird. He does have like that Alabama, Mississippi thing going on, and we're in upstate New York.
Yeah. Now, as someone who grew up in upstate New York, which another thing about this movie in general that didn't make me feel so good about myself, between the Greg character and how they portray native upstate New Yorkers, but not all of us sound like Otis does.
I don't think I've only met people like Otis when I lived in the South. When I was living in Mississippi, that's the only time I've ever seen Otis type people.
Yeah.
Marie goes up to Robert and she goes, do you trust Mac? And Mac goes, oh, he's just Irish.
Yeah, I wrote that line down too. Oh, he's just Irish. That's just how they are. They like their crazy fantasy stories with the blood and gore.
What the hell? I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Like, I understand what he's trying to get across, but I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I've never heard that as a way to describe an Irish person.
It's like you get the way you get the what's the right phrase? I mean, you get the feeling that they were intending to be insulting, but it made no sense that you don't know why it's insulting, but just the way that they said it makes it sound like it was a slur almost.
Exactly. So odd. And then there's another hard cut, and it's now we see Robert and Marie. They're in their bedroom, and Marie goes, "Hold me tight, Robert," and then they start having sex.
And another really awkward scene.
Then Marie pretends that she sees Greg. It's not Robert having sex with Marie; it's Greg, the husband from the beginning of the film, having sex with Marie. And it cuts between Robert having sex with Marie and Greg having sex with Marie, and it's so weird.
Yeah, it's almost the way that it's shot, you almost think that Greg was dead and that he was a ghost and she was seeing images of him or something, but he's very
like
much
mourning for
yeah,
him,
exactly.
right?
He's very much alive. And
Exactly.
again, why she introduced him in the beginning of the movie as her husband Greg, and yet she's here, banging this random guy. What's the nature of their relationship? Is she feeling guilty about it or what?
It's so odd. So odd. Once they're done having sex, it cuts to Marie and her sister, Shirley. Shirley, right?
Shirley,
was
yeah,
the name?
yep.
And they're with Mac now at his wood cutting camp. So she's done having sex. She gets Marie. Her and Marie go to see Mac at a wood cutting logging camp.
Yeah, like a logging facility where he's moving logs around, and there's some other guys there, also inexplicably creepy looking.
And Mac is cutting the wood for the boat. That's his whole purpose of being in the film. He's a part of the boat building experience because he supplies the lumber. And Mac makes a reference or talks to Marie and goes, "Your dad sure did make beautiful children," when he's pointing out Shirley. And
who says that?
Mac does. Mac said that to Marie. It's so weird. So
very
weird.
awkward.
Every time we see Mac, he just gets creepier and creepier.
But what's even weirder, though, is Marie starts rubbing Mac's forearm as if she's getting into this.
Well, I wrote that down too, and she starts off, she's like caressing. So Mac was sitting on like a backhoe or something, and she starts caressing the power tools, and then starts
Yes.
caressing his forearm too. It's again really confusing. You have no idea what these characters are supposed to be thinking and feeling. I mean, they have not established her as having any kind of mental instability or guilt or some kind of emotional reason to be doing all this weird stuff, and yet she just does it.
Marie is written as if she's a sex-starved housewife who's just going to try to get with anything and everyone throughout the entire film. Mac has no room for her shit, though, because he lights a match and he's like, this is what you're playing with. And I'm like, that was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I wrote that quote down too, because I thought he was going to like light a cigarette for her or something. I thought he was going to try to be suave and get into it, but he completely stonewalled her and said, the whole lighting the match, you see this is what you're playing with. It was, really badass.
Mac did not want any of her shit at that time. So Marie and Shirley leave, and the creepy guy comes up to Mac, one of the other workers. Now, I believe, I didn't rewind to confirm this, but I believe that this guy was one of the homophobes that Nikki beat up in the bar, because he had like a bandage on his face and stuff. Like, he looked like he got the shit kicked
That's
out
right.
of
Yeah,
him.
I remember it looked like one of his eyes was kind of covered up with a bandage or something. That's a good point. Honestly, a lot of the country yokel types, they all dress and look the same practically. Mac is the only one who stands out because of the mustache, but
Exactly.
all these guys look the same.
And the guy goes, I got plans for that bunch. And Mac says, leave them alone. We'll deal with them later. And the guy like doubles down and he's like, no, I'm going to get him. And then Mac grabs like a log or something and just smacks him right in the stomach with it.
Really hard too.
And he falls down, and that's the end of that scene. Because then we cut to Marie and her sister talking. This conversation goes absolutely nowhere. It's essentially about Marie talking about how she doesn't feel feelings beyond fear.
Yeah, again, this is another scene where they show the wife, the mother, you know, how unstable she is and how, apparently she's not feeling anything, but we have no reason to know why that this is happening. They haven't,
we shouldn't care either. No. Right? Like, there's nothing about the character Marie should make us care that she doesn't feel feelings. She hasn't done anything to earn it.
No, it's again, we've continued our trend in all of these movies we've been watching where there's just so few relatable or believable or redeemable characters. I mean, the fact that I have such a hard time even telling them apart sometimes, it doesn't bode well for me actually, empathizing with what they're going on, what's going on with them.
Exactly. Now that scene is super quick and it ends, and then it cuts to literally Marie, Shirley, Jay, and Robert. They're all outside. Jay comes by and smacks Shirley's ass with a belt out of nowhere, playfully. It's not like it's hard. And then Shirley goes, want to go for a swim? Jay goes, maybe later. And then there's a worm on Jay's shoulder. And then immediately he's like, let's go on the boat. Like, what the fuck?
So, I mean, let's break that down a little bit. So did Shirley leave the worm on his shoulder, or was it already there and that got him in the mood to go on a boat ride with her? Like,
I want to say that she put the worm on his shoulder, and that's what was like, yes, let's do this.
But it's in what way is a worm a cue for, hey, let's go have sex on this boat behind the reeds? I mean,
yeah,
it's a really bizarre way to signal, I guess.
It was Spanish Fly for this guy. He was so down for it.
Worms on my shoulder. Hot damn.
And so they go onto the boat and they row along. Now they're in the reeds. Mm-hmm. And was it Jay? I think Jay goes, I want to do something dirty,
Something nasty.
something revolting. Oh, it was Shirley. She was like, I want to do something dirty, something revolting, something nasty. And then she reaches her hands into the water, pulls out a bunch of mud, and she's like, want to make mud pies together?
What? It's
And then they have sex.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, she reaches, gets like the big wad of like the nastiest looking pond scum you could ever imagine, and just starts rubbing on his face, and then immediately goes in for a kiss. And there's clearly a lot of like a handful of that muck in between their lips. I mean, I guess she got what she wanted. It's nasty, all right.
It's so weird.
And he's into it too.
He is. It's so weird.
I mean, I guess
and then we cut.
He's into worms. I mean, that's not too surprising.
Exactly. He's like, oh my God, maybe there's fucking worms in this mud.
Oh yeah.
So we cut to a POV shot inside the house. Greg, what the hell was up with the voodoo head light fixture?
I don't know. I think so. This is another part of the movie where I actually gave it a little bit of credit because this POV part actually looked kind of creepy, and it kind of fit the sort of grainy, not so great quality of the movie, but it really fit. But then they showed, I think that was the mask, right, that Shirley found in the corner store that someone had just put over a lamp or something.
Okay,
it was a creepy look, but I couldn't remember if it was the actual mask or not. But it was.
You know what? It is the mask.
Okay.
You've all put it together now. So we go inside, POV shot inside the house. We see this mask over a light fixture, and the killer puts it on, and then he puts that sweater on. Because remember, it kind of pans out, and it shows the killer in like his full garb.
Yeah, it sort of transitions from a POV to like a normal third person where we see him. Whose sweater was it? He was kind of fondling clothes on the bed. I'm not sure whose bedroom it was, but
yeah, I don't know whose sweater that was. So the killer is now fully garbed, and then we get another hard cut to Jay and Shirley, and they're having sex somewhere else now. It's like they're having sex in like a work area, and Shirley goes, "There's something disgusting about you."
It looks like they're in the boat barn, or where they're building the boat. I'm not sure if that's where it is. I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of nondescript rickety old barns in this movie, so it's kind of hard to keep them straight. I'm sure they're in one of them, and not that it really matters because this scene goes nowhere.
It goes nowhere, and it doesn't stay around for a long time. It's just another excuse to show Shirley nude and have another sex scene.
Yeah, very very sleazy.
So odd. And then Marie shows up to the wood. I almost called it a wood cutting camp.
Wood cutting camp, as you do.
What would you call it?
A lumberyard, I guess.
Lumberyard. There we go. What's that place where they get the lumber?
The wood store?
The wood store.
Clearly, I'm not a good enough upstate New Yorker because I didn't work on a scary lumberyard when I was growing up.
So Marie shows up, and Mac is cutting wood with his the one chainsaw that they have for the film, because it's clearly the same yellow chainsaw that we saw in the beginning of the film. So he's cutting wood, and she shows up in a bikini, and she goes, "I need some eggs."
I wrote that quote down because, I mean, we've already established at this point that lines come out of thin air or come out of left field in this movie, but what the hell? Like, at this point, you've not established. I mean, did we miss a deleted scene somewhere where she says, "Oh, I should bake a cake today. Oops, we don't got eggs. Let's go ask Mac if he's got eggs at his lumberyard."
It is extremely odd that she would go to a lumberyard to ask Mac for eggs. There's usually, I would not assume that it would be a farm area, but as we soon find out, there's also cows at this lumberyard. And we know how Marie likes to fondle things. And Greg, I saw it coming from a mile away when they showed the cow's udder.
Yeah.
I was like, she's going to poke the udder. Yeah. Now, maybe she's going to poke the udder to be like, oh, there's milk inside, right?
Wow.
I don't know. I've never touched cow udder before. Maybe it feels weird. Maybe it's funny. Maybe it jiggles like jelly.
She's going to find out.
Fondling the damn nipple
It's
like she's giving it a hand job.
it's really uncomfortable. Yeah, and you're right. You totally see it coming a mile away because we just got that scene where she's caressing, power tools. I mean, yeah, like the fact that they frame it and the way that she's caressing it in kind of a creepy sexual way, it is really off-putting.
It was, because it doesn't just happen a little bit. It happens like the
They hold on
scene
it.
in which
Yeah.
she fondles the cow udder is so long and so awkward. I'm so glad Jackie didn't walk in on this part.
What the hell are you
Because
watching?
exactly, I would have been so awkward. I had to stop the movie and explain to her, like, this woman likes fondling things. I don't know.
And Mac is watching her do this.
Yeah.
He's kind of creeping along. I mean, again, we're in some random barn somewhere where I guess there are dairy cows, and he's just creeping on her from, behind a wood post, just watching her fondle the cow udder. Like it's totally normal.
Yeah, he doesn't look particularly turned on, but he also doesn't look disgusted.
No.
Mac goes up to him and goes, "Have you ever tasted it fresh?" And I swear I thought they were going to start sucking on the nipple. Luckily, it didn't go that way. Mac takes the nipple and squirts some milk into his hand.
Dirty,
and
filthy hand.
He starts licking it out of his damn hand, Greg.
Like a cat.
Yeah. And then he offers his hand to Marie as if, do you want to lick this milk out of my hand? And if I'm remembering this correctly, she doesn't take it. And then Mac rubs the milk on her.
Yeah, like let's unpack a little bit something there. So this woman clearly has some mental issues, some emotional issues. She's out here fondling udders and power tools, but that's where she draws the line, is drinking milk out of the filthy guy's hand. But yeah,
I know.
She slowly stands up, and yeah, he drinks the rest of the milk and just kind of wipes the rest of it on her thighs but she's cool with that. I'm not going to drink the raw milk out of this guy's hand, but I'll let him, wipe the residue on my thighs, because that's a thing that you do.
I know you're not supposed to drink raw milk, because raw milk can cause serious illnesses because it's not pasteurized.
Right.
But I don't think that would have killed her. And I don't think it would have been that weird in the long run. So she starts backing away from Mac, and over her bikini, she's wearing this kind of like a shawl type thing.
Yeah,
it's
like
a sheer
or something.
Yeah. And it gets caught on a nail, and it starts ripping off of her.
Because of course there's a nail right at like arm height to go pull this woman's shirt off.
And again, with the rape, what is going on with these movies? Because Max starts fondling her and forcing himself on her.
Which again, okay, like awful rape scenes are always uncomfortable to watch, but usually they're instigated by a character who has already established themselves to be a creepy, horrible lowlife. But just which Max sort of is, but they established in an earlier scene where she was caressing the power tools on his forearm that he rebuffed her advances. He pushed her away and did that weird match thing and said, "This is what you're playing with." But in this scene, he's into it. I don't know.
So weird. And then as she's being fondled, she envisions Greg again, just kind of like standing in the corner this time, watching them do this.
And judging her, I guess.
And then Mac forces a kiss on Marie. It seems like she's kind of receptive to it at first. And then she's like, "No, get away." She starts fighting back, and she grabs something from up in the rafter.
Yeah, what was
above
that?
them.
Was it like a lantern or something?
Like a lantern or something. And then she lightly bonks him on the head, and Mac falls down. Mac is a weak man when it comes to a slight bonk on the head.
He'll move those big heavy logs around like nothing, but lanterns to the head is his weakness.
Mac kind of like scolds her, and Marie runs away. And then we get another hard cut to the house. And the sister, Shirley, is pissed at Jay for some reason. She says that Jay only gets his sex ideas from girly magazines, and she's kind of yelling at Jay. I guess maybe the sex in the barn wasn't that good.
In the barn or in the field. I mean, yeah, again, a kind of weird left turn for Shirley, because she was into him a lot in the
A
previous couple
lot.
scenes, but now she's not having it.
And so Shirley leaves, and Jay's getting pissed. Obviously, I guess I would be too. I didn't see this breakup coming, and probably Jay, the character, didn't see it coming. And then out of nowhere, Jay gets strangled to death
Yes.
by the killer. And then he gets strung up by a noose and gets lifted up into the barn rafters.
I mean, at this point, I feel like we should point out, we're probably 2/3 through the movie at this point when the POV killer actually starts killing people from this main group. But we've had probably a half an hour of all of these weird scenes of kind of sleazy sex scenes and confusing dialogue and random barns. I mean, it just goes on forever. There's like a major lull in the movie, and it's at this point it kind of starts to get exciting again, I guess, when I guess who is the slasher in this movie starts actually slashing people.
Exactly. So Jay's dead, and then there's another hard cut to everyone dressed up, looking very fancy.
Yeah,
For what reason?
Some
Why, Greg? Why are these people dressed up?
I was really. I mean, not that I was not confused at this point already, but like it looks, because you're right. They're all kind of dressed up, almost in like for like a black tie event or something. Where are they going? We think that they're going to some ball, some fancy ball back in the cities. Are they going to drive back to New York from the cabin? But they ended up just staying there and having dinner there at the cabin.
Yeah, so weird. Now Robert is kind of like, where is Jay? Where's Jay at? Shirley doesn't give a shit anymore where Jay's at. No one really questions this either.
Yeah, no.
So he goes, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find Jay. And then he walks outside, and we get these really horrible shots of the killer hiding in the bushes and kind of like skittling around the area watching Robert.
Yeah, it's supposed to, I mean, I guess it's supposed to be tense at this point, but it kind of falls flat.
Now, I don't know if you've noticed this, but at one point there's a shot of the killer, and he's not looking at the camera, but he's looking kind of like to the side of the camera. And then it cuts to Robert, who's looking back in almost the same direction. And I went, do they see each other? The way that the shot's set up, it makes it look like they've noticed each other. But then Robert just goes right back inside the house.
I didn't notice that, but I wouldn't put it past this movie. So you're saying that like the angles of the camera made it look like they were making eye contact?
Exactly. It looks like they were sitting, that they were kitty corner to each other, looking at each other. Really, really weird. But Robert gives up pretty quickly looking for Jay, because he goes back inside, and there's some exposition about how Mac is going to stop by to borrow the car because he's going to take his daughter to go see a movie.
Which another thing that I guess maybe was established earlier in a scene that got cut. I don't know. But this guy who was forcing himself on this woman earlier in the movie, like 2 scenes ago, is just, okay, yeah, let him in the car, and it's no big deal.
So weird. So anyways, that goes on. Meanwhile, Shirley finds this pin cushion with these humongous needles in it, and she starts rubbing it over her face. She like takes out a needle and just starts rubbing it on her face.
Yeah.
Greg, what the hell are these characters doing?
I don't like that. What you just described is weird enough on its own, right? But she's like, I think it's just her and Nikki in the room at this point, and she's doing this in kind of a weird, seductive way towards Nikki, the gay character.
Exactly.
Is she seducing him?
It looked like she was trying to seduce him. Robert and Marie get the hell out of there. They're like, we're gonna go to the barn. We're gonna go look for Jay.
For reasons, yeah, I guess to look for Jay.
So Shirley starts stripping for Nikki. She's like at the top of a stairwell, and at the top of it, she's stripping. And Nikki's watching her, and he seems to be somewhat into it. At one point, Shirley pulls out this giant ass feather fan.
Yeah, like a weird like a cabaret dance that she's doing. She's a fan.
Where did she find that? Where did she get that? She obviously put forethought into it then at one point to go like, I should bring this because I'm going to strip for people.
That's what we do in upstate New York. We go to the cabin and we pack our cabaret lingerie and our feather fans, and that's how we have a good time.
So weird. So weird. Nikki seems to be into it. He's watching her strip. She does a fairly good job stripping. And then we cut back. Richard finds Jay dead and he's freaking out.
That's right. He kind of like he leaves Marie outside. He said, I'm going to go check in the barn. We don't see him see Jay being hung up. He walks in, you hear him yell, "Bah!" And he walks back out and he said, oh, Jay's hung himself.
Yeah. And then it cuts back to Shirley and Nikki. They're putting makeup on each other.
Yeah, they are.
And the thing is, when they're putting the makeup on, Nikki looks like shit. And then it cuts again. And then Nikki has perfect cat eye makeup. He has like the angles. It looks really good. The makeup job that he has.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Where it's clear that they shot the scene with them in the mirror where Shirley is putting the makeup on him, and she must have just done a real shit job because they had to cut away and have a proper makeup artist do it because it looks nothing. It looks not the same at all.
While this is going on, the killer enters the house that Nikki and Shirley are in, and the killer gets a pin from the pin cushion, and he finds Nikki. Nikki's like looking in a mirror,
admiring the makeup,
doing something.
I guess.
Yes, he's admiring the makeup. That's right. And the killer quickly jams this. I mean, it's a fairly long pin. It's probably at least a foot long.
It's big, yeah.
Into Nikki's ear, killing him pretty much instantly.
Yeah.
There's like a scream, and then he falls to the floor.
And he's kind of like twitching a little bit too. It was a really kind of cool, unique kill. I was actually surprised that this movie had it in it.
I looked this up. I couldn't find anything, and the FBI is gonna be really weirded out by
your search history.
my Saturday search history when I watch these movies, because I Googled, could that kill you? Could a pin going through your ear into your brain kill you? Because people have brain surgeries, and at one point it was acceptable to scoop parts of your brain out.
Oh, like he lobotomized himself or something.
Like lobotomy, right? So would a little needle like that actually kill you? I couldn't find an answer, but Greg, do you actually think that would have killed someone?
I feel like if it goes in the right spot, like if you get it and you go through the brainstem, you would probably kill yourself, or at least seriously, you're kind of you're brain dead at that point. I guess the killer got lucky and got him in kind of the sweet spot, but yeah, I mean, I feel like other places you would sort of, I taste bananas now randomly for some reason.
Oh man, that would have been. I wouldn't have put past this movie if he was like bananas, coconuts. And then he like dies.
And then dies. Because actually, you know what? That reminds me of that scene in Hannibal, right, where Ray Liotta's character is sat at the head of the table, and Hannibal Lecter pulls a piece of his brain out, cooks it, and feeds it to him, and he starts to.
That's right.
He's alive, but is clearly loopy and not sure what's going on. That actually would have been probably an even creepier way to go with this one, where he turns Nikki into a brain dead zombie for the rest of the movie.
It was interesting. So Nikki, my favorite character in the movie, is now dead.
Oh, the only character with charisma and funny lines and interesting dialogue, dead.
So Shirley hears the scream. She notices that there's a killer. There's a slight chase, but Shirley runs to the damn basement.
Yeah, the basement, because that's where you go when you're being chased and need another way out.
And she stands next to a wall and she just screams. She screams like the same, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this?" over and over and over again.
Yeah.
The killer knocks her out, or kind of like clocks her, right?
Yeah, there's kind of a scuffle there.
The killer puts Shirley on a table saw and then binds her arms in barbed wire, essentially locking her in place on the table saw. Now, this scene was comedic gold because the killer plugs the table saw into the light. I guess like the light outlet has a power outlet on it.
Yeah, it was like there was a light bulb there, but there was he plugged it into it. I guess the fixture had an outlet on it too. I don't know.
Very weird. And then he starts trying to turn it off and on. He's like really trying to figure this out.
He's like, there's like a pull string for the lamp, and he's clicking it a couple times, and he's getting angry.
He can't figure it out. So then the killer goes up the stairs and he turns off all the light switches. All right. So Richard now has ran into the house and he finds Nikki dead. And Richard goes and he gets a gun. And you're like, okay, Richard, you got this. You have a shotgun. Obviously, you don't have to get close to someone when you shoot them. And a lot of people don't realize this in movies. The reason that people invented guns, bows and arrows, stuff that is ranged is because they went, I want to kill that guy who's super far away from me.
But I don't want to get close to him.
I don't want to get close to him. So they invented items that do that. But Richard is not a smart man.
No.
Because he finds the killer and immediately they start kerfuffling. There's
runs
a fight.
up to him.
And the killer has this meat hook cleaver thing. Doesn't stab Richard with it. It was kind of, again, like he hooked it around him and then he just pushes him out a window.
Yeah, that whole kill with Richard
dead.
was kind of confusing. I mean, he's clearly dead at the end because he falls onto like a pile of sharp sticks or something, but I wasn't quite sure how he got leverage, how the killer got leverage over him.
Exactly. Very weird. Very odd. So the killer comes downstairs and Marie is just standing there like in shock. I don't know why. Maybe because she saw Nikki dead? But Marie is just there standing in shock, and the killer removes the mask,
dun, dun, dun.
And it's Greg.
Greg, no. As soon as I actually didn't see that coming. They did a decent enough job, I guess, of setting up multiple characters who could be the killer.
Neither did I, because every movie that we've seen before this, there have always been threads that start and go nowhere. So I just assume Greg was a throwaway character.
Yep. Well, I guess, yeah, a little to the movie's credit, they actually brought Greg back. The one character who they have solidly established as having mental stability issues. Okay, yeah, I can buy it, but come on, Greg, for the Gregs on the team, why do you got to be the murderer?
So disappointing. Then there's a hard cut, and it's Mac and his daughter driving back from the movies, and Mac's daughter goes, well, are you going to return the car tonight? I don't want to stay at home alone. And Mac goes, you're right. I'm not going to return the car tonight. They can wait till tomorrow. That little girl is Yancey Butler. Yancey Butler is an actress who grew up to play the Witchblade in the TNT series Witchblade. She's also done a couple movies. She was in Kick-Ass 1 and 2.
Really?
As the mom character of McLovin. Can't think of his real name. So she's been doing a couple things. Good for her.
Yeah,
she
I guess.
From doing crap to actually doing movies that went into the movie theater.
Was she a child actress, or was this her kind of like a one-time thing when she was a kid?
This was Savage Weekend, 1979, and her next credited thing was in 1991, which was Law and Order. So yeah, there was quite a big gap in her filmography.
Interesting.
There. So Mac and his daughter, they go home. The car's not going to be returned tonight, so that just leaves Marie and Greg in the house alone with each other. Greg is really upset. He's upset because he loves how much power that he had, and he hates how much he lost it, right? He's like, oh, I had so much power. I loved people waiting outside my office for scraps from me.
This whole
So
monologue,
weird.
it fell. I mean, maybe you were following it more than I was, but this whole monologue about him again going into this backstory with when he were working for the governor and how much he loved the power, and it just I did not give a shit because
None of it.
I mean it was not a major part of the movie at all. And when he starts monologuing, I just tuned out. I'm amazed I even remember as much as I do.
It's a lot of Greg talking about how much he loved his power, how he lost his power, how he wants his power back, and that he's upset that Marie left him. Now, the plan is Greg is going to take a boat with Marie and he's going to set it on fire and he's going to kill Marie and himself. Murder-suicide. Tie up all the loose ends. Greg talks until the damn sun comes out. And Mac arrives.
That's a good point.
With the car.
I mean, the whole movie, they don't do a great job of establishing, how much time has passed. But you're right. I mean, are we to be believed that he's just been monologuing all night and now he's going to go and take Marie off somewhere?
Exactly. So weird, right? So Mac arrives and Marie runs out the front door. You literally see Marie run out the house. And Greg is kind of stalking around the house. He obviously realizes that Mac's there and that Marie is getting away. So he's kind of, skulking around, making sure that he doesn't get caught, but trying to catch up to Marie. Mac is like, hello? Is anyone here?
Home?
He sees Nikki dead. He goes upstairs and he looks out the window and he sees Richard's dead.
Right.
So then Matt comes back downstairs and he goes to the basement and he opens up the door and then he flips on all of the light switches, which ignites the table saw and Shirley dies. But Mac doesn't know that he did this. He never goes down into the basement.
No. And she's clearly, I mean, she's alive this whole time. And I think they switch to her and you can see her. She's like freaking out. And I think you hear her scream as the table saw turns on. I mean, if you were checking out a house to see if anyone's home, if I flipped a light switch, I heard a table saw turn on, and then I heard someone screaming, I mean, call me crazy, I might go look and see what was going on.
Mac is like, I killed someone, I'm leaving. He realizes what he does. He doesn't want to deal with the outcome. So Mac just leaves.
I mean, yeah, I feel like this is one of the biggest disappointments for me about this movie is that was the way that they set that whole thing up. I mean, it was kind of goofy, but it showed a lot of forethought, and it was actually really cool. It was a really unique way to kind of prolong the tension of this woman getting killed with a table saw, which, like, as it's happening earlier in the movie, you think, oh God, this is going to be a grisly kill scene. And then, that whole thing where he plugs it in, it doesn't turn on and he can't figure it out. So the killer just leaves. And like, it's such a cool way to kind of prolong that tension where you think, okay, well now, like, when is that table saw going to turn on? That's like the one interesting part of that movie where you were engaged and wondering when something was going to happen. And the way that they did it, where it was someone accidentally turning it on by flipping the light switch, I mean, that's kind of genius, but it just falls so flat in this because of how the pacing of it all is so disappointing.
Such a limp noodle.
Very limp, very limp.
So Mac goes outside and he sees Greg and Marie, and they're walking nonchalantly with each other as if nothing is going on in the world.
Oh, yeah, Marie's
as
going
if
along
Greg
with it.
isn't about to do a murder-suicide. And then Marie screams for help. And Mac runs over and they start getting into a fight. The fight is obviously unchoreographed. It looks like they're just kind of swinging around and they're just supposed to do like certain things, because at one point, Mac gets kneed in the balls.
It's really ugly. You're right. It doesn't look like it was choreographed at all.
Mac picks up the chainsaw and he's trying to attack Greg, but Greg has a piece of wood and he hits Mac with it and the chainsaw falls down and Greg and Mac are on top of each other trying to kill each other. Enter Otis. Otis has this dumbass look on his face as if people aren't trying to kill each other. And we realize that we've come full circle. This is the beginning of the movie. because he picks up the chainsaw and he has that nonchalant, I'm a dumbass look.
Very deadpan.
And then he just walks over. He just walks over to Greg and just sticks it inside of him.
Chainsaws him in the back.
He sticks the chainsaw in the back of Greg, killing him. Otis looks deadpan into the camera, smiles, goes back to the grave. The end. Savage Weekend.
Oh, Savage Weekend. Yeah.
I hate it when characters look directly into the camera.
Yeah. You mentioned that it was sort of a callback to the beginning where we saw parts of the end scene in the beginning. Did he look at the camera in the beginning too?
He didn't. That was the thing. He kind of like, it cuts before he looks into the camera. He's just kind of walking, like, not towards the camera, but slightly left to the camera.
Yeah.
But then at the end of this one, I'm going to look directly in the camera.
Ha, wink, wink. Did you see what I did there, audience? You thought I was going to be the killer, didn't you? But I wasn't. I saved her.
Again, like, the filmmaker did a good job of setting that up. In the beginning, you think, oh, that's the killer.
Yeah.
But then at the end, there's the little twist.
Obvious red herring.
That's cool, how they did that. And I think that's probably one of the earliest examples that I know of for horror movies to use that kind of trickery, where they set up a false killer in the beginning and then it resolves itself because we're not seeing it from the whole perspective. We only saw it from a certain perspective.
Right.
That was really good. But just everything in the middle, it didn't tie it together. It was disgusting.
Yeah.
It
really dragged. And I feel like the part where all these scenes with Mac and Marie, where both of them are behaving really strangely, and that they hate each other. Are they buddies? But then, they establish Mac as being this horrible sleazeball and talking about, we'll do something to her when I say. But then later in the movie, you see him being this doting father, taking your daughter to a movie and saving this woman from her, insane ex-husband, I guess. The character motivations are all over the place.
Exactly. The only person that I felt was at least likable was Nikki.
Yeah.
But even Nikki had disgusting habits, like wanting to watch people have sex and driving his hands into barbed wire and obviously probably getting off on it. So weird.
Yeah.
Extremely odd. So the movie had a budget. Oh, just wait. Before we get into some of the backstory stuff, what do you give the movie out of 5 stars?
Again, this was hard for me. I could see that there was a lot of potential here, but I wasn't angry at the movie. I was just disappointed. It's almost worse. I mean, it's got to be a 2-star for me, unfortunately.
Wow. You're giving this 2 stars?
See, the reason I give it 2 stars is because, again, I think that there was potential there that they just squandered. The whole thing with the table saw was really well done. There were some creepy images with the POV camera. Again, this is one of those movies or one of those cases where I want to reserve the 1 star for movies that I actively hated, or where the filmmaker clearly wasn't even trying. I think that they tried to do something interesting here, and it just failed more often than not.
All right. So I must have been really pissed. I gave this movie 0.5 star.
Oh, boy.
So it does a couple things. Again, looking directly into the camera, there was way too much forced sex or just forced sexual situations in the film that it didn't require it. And plus, the cow udder fondling was one of the most disgusting things that I've seen in a film that served no purpose. No purpose at all.
Yeah, no. I mean, again, it'd be one thing if they were sort of establishing her as sort of, really damaged and having emotional issues. And I guess it would be kind of a weird image in that context. But otherwise, in the movie, they like, she's supposed to be the kind of the straight man in this movie, where she's the stable one, and that she's doing this crazy shit that is totally inexplicable.
Yeah. So odd. So Savage Weekend was made for $58,000, which is an extremely extremely small budget, even for the 70s.
That explains a lot, actually. It seemed
Uh,
very low budget.
the writer-director wrote it over the course of 2 weeks while he was staying up in East Hampton, realizing that he didn't have a lot of money. So he needed to choose a location that he could use extensively and not be boring. So I'll give him that the lake, the boathouse, and the house that they film in, it definitely wasn't a boring setting. I definitely felt that I was in upstate New York the entire time. He utilized the location that he had to the best of his ability.
Yeah,
I'll give him
it didn't
that.
look. Yeah, it didn't. The set didn't look cheap, or I mean, I don't think that any of it was a set. I think it was all just like on location shooting. And yeah, I mean, from that perspective, it looked okay.
So Savage Weekend was brought to the Cannes Film Festival in 1978.
Really?
And the aspect ratio for the film was incorrect. They didn't mask it properly. And throughout the entire thing, there was boom mics and other equipment that were visible throughout the entire print. At one point during one of the showings of this film, the director and his wife manually covered the top and bottom frames with tape
Just to get the
in order to get
ratio.
the
Oh,
aspect
geez.
ratio. Canon Films, when they were going to release the film in November 14th, 1980, promised the director that they were going to fix this before the theatrical release. Canon did not, and they released the film as it was shown in Cannes with boom mics and other equipment showing.
Oh God!
So when people went to the movie theater to see this, it looked even worse.
Laughable. Jeez. So I mean, the version that we watched on Amazon was like a 4:3. Was that?
Yes.
So did they shoot it on widescreen stock, and then they wanted to crop the sides out where the equipment was? Because I don't remember seeing any boom mics or anything.
I don't remember seeing anything. I don't know what the intended aspect ratio of it is, but I mean, I didn't see anything.
Yeah, no.
In there.
I guess they finally fixed it.
Exactly. In 2009, this film entered public domain.
Really?
So there are a lot of reprints and reissues of this film, often in low quality, which is probably what we saw.
Yeah, that explains a lot. Because I mean, I remember seeing somewhere that when I looked it up on Amazon, I saw that there's a Blu-ray release of this, right? But what we saw was not a high definition scan whatsoever.
No. In 2015, 20th Century Fox did release an HD transfer of this using the original source material. So if you go on Amazon Prime today, you're going to see a copy of a copy of a copy of a VHS. You're not going to see, Blu-ray 4K Savage Weekend.
That actually, again, that explains a lot, because I feel like the version that we saw, you're right. It looked like it could have been a VHS transfer. It was really blurry and grainy. I mean, worse than like normal SD quality video that you would see on a streaming service. It was really terrible. And I wasn't sure if that was just because they shot it on really, like a really bad film stock, or the lighting was just bad. I'm not sure, but yeah, it sounds like the whatever transfer we saw was probably part of the problem.
So what makes this even more upsetting, though, because we both agree, and I was kind of worried after looking up this film, and I used Letterboxd to log all my films, was people actually like this movie.
Like, in what way? Like a funny bad way, or is an actual this is a cool horror movie way?
As in, it's a literal cool horror movie way.
What?
There are numerous 4 and 5-star reviews for this film on Letterboxd.
That's surprising.
It's insane that anyone could get anything out of this movie.
I mean, I thought I was being pretty charitable with that 2-star review. Again, there's clearly potential in some of these scenes, like little nuggets of interesting things going on, a couple of unique kills with the needle and the table saw, but it's not, I mean, the bulk of it, I feel like we have to stress again, the bulk of the movie is boring at best, sleazy, weird, and uncomfortable and confusing at worst.
And that's the thing. They go too far with the sex stuff and not far enough with the violence. There's way too much sexual content in this film, and I'm not one to shy away from sexual content in film. I don't want to be that hypocrite that's like, I want to see a guy's skull get cracked open, but don't show boobs.
Ew.
But do it in a way to where it complements the film that we're seeing, and it isn't just a woman fondling cow udders.
I like how that's the sexual content that you go for with that, because that's exactly how the way it's shot.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, all of it. I mean, most of it is with Shirley, right? I mean, except for the one scene with the one sex scene that actually seemed to fit a little bit was with Marie and her boyfriend, I guess. But she was seeing Greg the whole time. But there's actually some interesting kind of emotional things going on there, or some, the fact that it was Greg showing up, you're wondering, what's going on with that. I gave that a pass because it kind of made sense. But all of the scenes with Shirley was clearly just, hey, the movie's only 60 minutes, we got to get filler in there, and teenage boys like boobs, throw some scenes together. So
horrible.
So I mean, kind of towards that end, we talked a couple times about the fact that this was sort of billed as like a proto slasher. It clearly only got a release after Halloween came out, and I don't know if this was after Friday the 13th or not, but clearly the reason this got a wider release is because of, hey, this genre is really hot right now. What do we got in that catalog that we can release?
Exactly. And probably back then, people weren't realizing that this film was made years earlier. So Friday the 13th was released May 9th, 1980. Halloween was released October 25th, 1978. And Savage Weekend theatrically was released November 14th, 1980. So it at the time was probably seen as a copycat of both of those films.
So I wanted to really get your take on this. To what degree do you think this was a slasher movie?
It wasn't.
Okay.
This is not a slasher film.
I feel the same way. And that's why I was really confused about, because I read a little bit about it, and that's the way that, they were sort of describing this as, it was a slasher movie that was made before Halloween, but it came out after, and it's, supposedly it was blazing that trail. And I'm sure a lot of movies around that time tried to make that claim as well. But I mean, aside from the maybe 10 or 15 minutes that we got where the masked killer, who we didn't know was Greg at the time, was skulking around the house and killing Nikki and doing the whole table saw setup. I mean, aside from that 10 or 15 minutes, that's really the only thing that felt like a slasher movie to me. The rest of it was not at all. Because I mean, there was none of the punishment of, the promiscuous characters or youth rebellion. I mean, none of that came in at all. The things that you sort of think are trademarks of the slasher genre was not there at all. I mean, you pretty much, there's no masked killer for a good chunk of it. Yeah, it just did not seem like a slasher movie to me at all.
For me, the early prototype of a slasher movie is Halloween, because he slashes people, right? It is clearly, I have knife, stab, slash, dead. There was somewhat elaborate setups for the death. And that's not what you get in a slasher film. Sometimes the situation in which the person dies might be elaborate. Like, what is it? The Friday the 13th movie where the guy takes a poop, and he's singing, ooh, baby, and then he gets speared.
Goddamn enchiladas.
Yeah, he gets speared through the outhouse. That's elaborate. But it's not, I tied someone to a table saw, 10 minutes later, someone's going to kill you. A slasher is, you, the killer, are in a situation, you're going to die. Blood, guts, blah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, there were the rising action, the tension build up, and immediately releasing the tension with the kill, and the music kind of fades down, and we get to another scene of characters talking or doing something kind of low key, and repeat over every 15 to 20 minutes throughout the rest of the movie. Like, that's sort of the rhythm of a normal slasher movie, but this movie does not follow it at all. The fact that whole table saw scene, which again was cool, but you're right, it was way too elaborate and too drawn out to really feel like a slasher movie particularly.
Exactly. So odd, so bad.
Yeah, and yeah, I totally agree that this did not seem like a slasher movie at all. It had some potential, but yeah, the fact that all the interesting bits were either right at the beginning or right at the end, it was a slog to get through.
Well, hopefully that's not the case for the next film, because our next film is Gas Pump Girls. Now, I'm totally expecting this to be, a sex-filled comedy. We heard about this film through Joe Bob
We
Briggs
did, yeah.
when we saw a speaking engagement with him. Gas Pump Girls, the tagline is, "You'll love the service they give." Following their high school graduation, Christine Baker and her friends take over their uncle's gas station, which faces stiff competition from the newer, bigger, more modern station that has recently opened across the street. This is the original Good Burger. Do you remember Good Burger?
Of course, I remember Good Burger with Keenan and Kel.
In the movie they open up the other burger place, and then Good Burger has to figure out how to beat the new people.
The evil corporate burger place across the street, of course.
Exactly. So this is it. Gas Pump Girls is the Good Burger of 1970, but for sex comedy.
That's okay. The way that you just described that, likening it to Good Burger, I love. And I love that there's one or two weirdos out there listening to this who are going to get that. And
Yes.
we've got those listeners for life.
So Gas Pump Girls is going to be on Amazon Prime, free to watch, free in quotes. Hopefully it's better looking than the last few ones, which have been really hard to get through watching. If it's bad, I am probably going to buy it. If like the print is bad, I don't want to watch another VHS quality film.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think all of the ones that we've seen so far, none of them have been, I don't think any of them have been HD transfers of, original film. Or have they? I don't think so.
No.
They've all been kind of really low quality.
The best looking one was The Corpse, but that still wasn't HD. It was just almost like DVD quality, which is way better than a lot of the other stuff that we've been getting.
Oh, you mean?
So I'm not going to complain about that.
That was Crucible of Horror. I forgot that had
Crucible of Horror.
I forgot that had multiple names. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yes. I think that was probably the best looking in terms of the transfer quality. But you're right. I mean, most of this stuff has been DVD at best.
Yes. So hopefully we get back on track. We get a good film here. Joe Bob Briggs has talked this up pretty big. So my expectations are quite high for a movie that we probably never would have heard of before.
Yeah, no, I'm not big on that because I think that he mentioned that in the context of his wider, hillbilly cinema thing,
yes.
And I guess this was a big example of it. So we'll see. Other than Deliverance, that's really the only thing I can really think of in that genre. So hopefully this entertains like that did.
Exactly. Well, Greg, do you have anything else?
Well, I've got my quote of the week, and there were quite a few weird ones in this, but I think this one for me goes to Mac when he's on the boat with Marie and Jay, and he's recanting the story of how Otis lost his mind and branded this poor woman, and he's describing how the winters up in upstate New York, they get cold and you get lonely, and when you get lonely, you get weird.
That's right. Oh my God. I can't believe I forgot to bring that up. I love it.
And that was actually the point in the movie where I realized that this was the same actor from Reanimator, because when he's narrating that story, his voice, it was his voice that reminded me of, oh, this is that guy. This is that actor from Reanimator, because he's got such a distinctive voice when he gets really low and kind of creepy and
yeah, especially when he gets his head cut off in Reanimator, and then he's just on the tray, and
gargling.
His voice definitely, when it hits a few octaves lower.
Oh yeah,
Mr. West.
When you get lonely, you get weird.
I love it. I love it. All right, well, let's go ahead. Hopefully, the next one's better, and just remember, since we said it,
that's canon.
I can remember everything I have to do. Don't worry, it's just 4 easy steps. Grab it, stick it in, squeeze it, and let it peter out.
Gas Pump Girls, a motion picture delight when our girls change over a gas station and turn it into a fun station with sounds that will get you dancing while your tank is getting filled.
We'll treat you like there's no one else in the world.